Hello and welcome, and in today's video I'm going to share with you the top 10 Ark productivity creatures, so let's get into it. In at number 10 is the Angler, and in my opinion this creature is actually largely disrespected, and I think that it shouldn't be, and albeit not everyone is going to go out there to tame an anglerfish, I think everyone should, or at least just give it a go once, and if you still don't like it, then you have made your own judgment, and that is that, and I can't really force you to tame this thing. But in terms of its abilities and its great use, this thing is basically the best silica pearl gatherer which you can find, and silica pearls are an extremely useful resource, so why don't you get one of these things to gather those silica pearls up? And also, like the ichthyosaurus, they are pretty fast in the water as well, albeit not as fast, and they do spawn deeper in the ocean, so they are a little bit harder to tame. But I think at some point you should at least give these things a go, as they have really great silica pearl gathering abilities, and they're pretty fast in the water too, making them pretty great for travel under the seas. In at number 9 is the Castaroides, and this creature is pretty much the best wood farmer. This thing is just full of a wealth of farming capabilities, many of which, pretty much all of which actually, cannot not be mentioned. Don't know why I said not so many times there, but obviously apart from the chainsaw, which is a little bit OP, this is going to be the best way to gather wood, and it is also a really great swimmer underwater too. And obviously beaver dams are great for silica pearls, rare flowers, rare mushrooms, wood, and cementing paste, which is a kind of another bonus from these things. Obviously that doesn't happen once you've tamed one, but they are pretty great for productivity even if you don't have one tamed, which is really something to say. But their wood gathering abilities, once tamed, are really worth it, and you can gather so much wood with these things. Even in fact, I think they have a 50% weight reduction on wood, and their saddle acts as a portable smithy as well, which is just a nice little bonus which actually fairly few creatures have, and it is actually very exciting to see that the Castaroides has this ability too. Next up we have the Stego, and ever since the TLC 3 update, this is one of my favourite creatures, which I will always go back to in terms of productivity. Compared to something like the Bronto, it is significantly smaller, and obviously from that, it is easier to transport around, and it can gather still a very significant amount of berries, albeit not as much as the Bronto, so if you're a Bronto lover, then just pretend I'm talking about the Bronto instead of the Stego. But apart from berry gathering as well, this thing is great at gathering wood too, albeit not having the best weight stat out there, but it is obviously levelable, and for some reason Microraptors are not able to hit you when you're on this thing, but it probably has something to do with rider protection. But their main kind of utility in terms of their abilities is their plate abilities, namely having the sharpened plate dealing the most amount of damage and just being great for gathering berries. It is the only plate where you can gather berries. Then you have the heavy plate, which is great for gathering wood, and you also do have the hardened plate, which is going to be your turret soaker for you PvP players out there. And I don't know if more offer different rider protection, but I think all of them do just offer rider protection. And also when their tail swings, they can deal bleed damage as well. And as far as I know, they are the they are the only herbivore to be able to do that. So that is a great ability for it to have. Now, the Mwing, ever since its release, has been a highly respected tame, and one which myself I hugely respect. Obviously, in terms of its productivity, this is going to be great for travelling around the map. I'm pretty sure it is the fastest Ark creature when going at its full speed, and obviously it is a glider, so it may not be as useful as a Tropiconathus if you wanted to use that. But the thing is about that, it is significantly harder to tame than the Mwing, and you can't really use it until much later on in the game. I think the Mwing saddle is unlocked at level 19, which is absolutely crazy to think about, and also this thing is ridiculously easy to tame, and can even be your first tame on Gen 2. and I think it's on Fielder as well, but it may not be. But it definitely, obviously, is on Gen 2, and they're the only map where I have actually tamed one. Obviously, very easy with a few signposts, or if you're later on, you can use the net gun. Obviously, they're essentially going to act as a portable feeding trough as well, which makes them great for raising up creatures, and they can carry creatures around, which is great as well, and they can even belly flop on bushes and gather berries. There is so much to like about this tame. Next up on the list, we have the Gacha, and obviously you'd expect this thing to be on this list. Obviously not above the number 5 slot, as it is not really too useful on many other maps apart from Extinction, where obviously it is most accessible, and I think it only does spawn on Extinction. Not too sure about that though. Either way, yes, it can be effective on other maps. It is best on Extinction, and also since it's nerf, it isn't the greatest creature anymore for productivity, but I still think it deserves to be on this list, simply because of the idea behind its ability, and the fact that you can still get OP loot from this thing. It is actually still insane. Although it has got nerfed, it is still at a very reasonable level, and you can even get gachas which are capable of allowing you to gather element dust, which obviously isn't very useful anymore after Gen 2, but still it's a nice thing to have. In at number 5, we have the Theory, and the Theory has to be recognized for its absolute wealth of abilities. This thing is just absolutely packed with them, and it is very iconic in design as well. Although we're not talking about that, that was my previous video if you want to go and check that one out. In terms of productivity, these are by far some of the best gatherers of fiber, wood, thatch and berries. And who doesn't like a creature that can just gather everything that is berry or kind of natural related really easily. And it can either gather meat as well. Gather meat as well, unlike many other herbivores which simply can't gather meat at all, and that is a really nice thing to have. On top of that, this thing is also a really great boss creature, especially on the dragon boss fight on the island, as that boss is particularly unfair to all kinds of carnivores. The only real downside is that you will need sweet vegetable cake to heal these things up quickly, and that is very expensive. But if you level your Theories up properly and you have a Deod to hand, you shouldn't really struggle too much, and all of their great abilities will outweigh that minor inconvenience. The Beels is next, and this creature has an absolutely insane ability which can't be forgotten about. If you didn't know already, this is pretty much, if not the best way to get cementing paste. And for some reason, the last time I talked about it, I think I forgot to actually mention how you gather the cementing paste with this thing and how it actually works. Well, essentially, if you kill insects with this thing, it will gather cementing paste. And especially considering that insects do not have levels on ASA, this is a perfect little creature for the job, as you don't even need a higher level one now. Obviously, you are still going to want a high level if you're going into the insect caves, but you can get thousands, if not tens of thousands of cementing paste in one run, and it is really efficient and really consistent. And unlike the beaver dam method, you don't risk the beaver dams not spawning in, and also the beaver dams not really having any cementing paste in, and you do have to rely on the beaver dams being rebuilt as well. Whereas with this thing, you can simply just head into the insect cave anytime really, and there will be insects in there, or any other part of the map, or any cave really, as most caves are absolutely ram-packed with those things. In at number 3 is the Desmodus Draculae, and obviously this thing is an absolute king when it comes to productivity, and especially in the aspects of taming. This thing is an absolute beast when it comes to its sanguine elixir, essentially doing a third of a tame in simply 1 second with the press of a button, which is an absolute godsend for you official players out there. And also, it is not the hardest thing to tame, albeit not the easiest as well, but it can be done pretty simply with maybe 50 to 100 blood bags. I'm not actually sure about how many you need on official. In terms of its abilities though, obviously it can make sanguine elixir, it can grapple onto walls like you're seeing here, similarly to the Tapijara. It also has the glide ability, it can go invisible at night, which doesn't work on extinction obviously, as the wasteland biome, at least I think that's what it's called, doesn't have a night cycle, so sorry I couldn't show that to you today. In at number 2 is the Yankee, and this creature really is basically the epitome of metal gathering. And yes, the Deod isn't on this list, so I'm going to chuck it in as a little creature duo, although there isn't going to be any b-roll for that creature. But essentially, the Yankee is going to work as your pickaxe, and the Deod is going to work as your hatchet. But the Yankee, in my opinion, is a slightly more useful version of the Deod, obviously, as the pick is somewhat more useful than the hatchet, as it has the capabilities to gather the most amount of metal. And on Ark, you're going to need a lot of metal, don't know why I can't speak today, but yes, you're going to need a lot of metal throughout all of your Ark progress, so you really do need to get it in, and the Yankee is a great creature to do that with, as it can gather loads and loads of metal, and it even has a really nice weight stat on top of that, and it's an easy tame too. And when paired with the creature in number 1, you have yourself the ultimate creature combo. In at number 1 is the Argy, and really, what did you expect? This creature is the king of productivity, and no creature can really beat it in any sense at all. It is just absolutely insane at its job, and no creature can beat it, especially considering the level being in the late 60s, although not quite level 69, so no Michael Rosen memes in this video. In terms of its other abilities, apart from its insane metal gathering and weight reduction on things like metal, crystal and obsidian, this thing also has a wide range of other capabilities, such as being able to pick up any kind of medium-sized creature, you could say, maybe like small, medium. I'm not actually sure the kind of size limit. I know on a Quetz, the largest thing you can really pick up is a mammoth, but on an RG, you're only really going to be picking up players and maybe an Yankee or a Deod, as they're going to gather a lot of resources for you, and that really is the kind of main use for this creature. But it does deal a pretty good amount of melee damage as well, making it a good creature for sky combat, and it has enough stamina to fly across the map, the whole map on the island pretty much, and it also does have enough weight to obviously transport all of those resources. Don't know why it stuttered so much there, but it does have a couple of nice little extra things as well, like its saddle being a portable smithy, the same as the Casteroides, and having a nice regen buff when it kills a dead corpse. And give it up for our patrons, Ekaterina Puchkova and Karina Thorne, Dominic Maciejewski, sorry about that name, and everyone else that's on this list. All the people I've mentioned are paid members, and if you feel like that's something you want a shout out at the end of the video, go join the Patreon or become a paid YouTube member.